When you are abruptly rejected, how do you deal? What is the most empowered next step for you to take? Well, first of all, let's get clear on the different types of abrupt rejection. These include, but are not limited to, being abruptly fired. Let's say that you come into work one day, things seem fine, there hasn't really been much communication about a plan that puts you on thin ice for a while. It's like maybe you got one piece of feedback that was less than favorable, but you thought, okay, we're going to work on this. And then the very next day, you're just not working there anymore. It could be a breakup where things seem to be going pretty well in your relationship, but ultimately, maybe seemingly out of the blue, they are no longer interested in being in a relationship with you. It could be inviting a friend to your birthday party and them responding, actually, no, I don't want to go and I don't want to be your friend anymore. Right. So these are instances of extremely abrupt rejection where it's stonewalling. There's really no opportunity to ask questions. There isn't really much of an opportunity to find common ground where there are the options of rupture and repair. The choice has been made on your behalf that a rupture has occurred. So here are three things that if you are in that situation now, I would like you to be aware of for your personal empowerment. The first is something that you don't want to do that you may really want to do, based on my experiences too, right? I'm speaking from experience, clients' experiences, is the desire to explain yourself. This is an external focus of, oh, well, maybe if they just understood or they didn't have complete information. So there's this desire, if they just knew these facts, then it would change the outcome. They wouldn't have abruptly rejected in this way. Let's give another example of, let's say that someone talks smack about you and tells someone else that you said something about them that you didn't actually say. And thus, that person ends up believing it and then not wanting anything to do with you. So let's say that something like that happened, or you suspect something like that happened. Here is your reframe. If they cut you off and stonewall you and basically say, yes, this is over, and maybe even provide a reason. That is not your invitation to contest it and say, oh, but you don't have complete information. They don't ask for it. They don't want it. You can ask, hey, are you interested in another perspective? But if they were, then that would be up to them to own that part of the communication and to say, hey, I'm feeling a really strong inclination towards diminishing this romantic, professional, whatever type of relationship it is. But I'd like to hear your perspective or your take or learn if this is actually the truth. However, they didn't do that. This could be due to react. This could be due to them having an underlying doubt and being like, oh, look, there it is. I always knew that this negative thing was below the surface, whether it's accurate or not. What I would like you to do instead is have that realization and let them think what they may. Mel Robbins has this great quote, let them. It's two words. While you may feel a very strong and understandable desire to preserve the relationship and to save it, this can feel radical at first, especially if you have gotten so used to fighting for things for the majority of your life, where if you didn't fight for it, you didn't get it. But honestly, maybe if you fought for it, you still didn't get it. So this is your invitation to let go of what is leaving you willingly and intentionally, whether you deserve it or they deserve it or not. Maybe you have so much more to give and they won't receive it, and that's a bummer. Or vice versa. But if someone else decides and they utilize that agency, whether they were coerced into it, whether they actually had a change of mind or heart, it doesn't matter. You have to look at what's right in front of you. And if they are saying this is done, this is over, instead of getting bitter or getting overly curious, that's a good time to say, well, okay, my understanding is that you're not interested in having a conversation to repair this dynamic, that you are interested in a complete dissolution with the information that you have. Okay. And I know it can seem a bit stoic, even a bit cold at first, but ultimately, this is what saves you peace. Another question that I like to encourage my clients to ask is, do you have a desire to understand? But they've already shown you that they don't. But if you need to hear someone say yes or no to that question to give you further clarity, that is an option that's available to you. The second thing I would like you to be hyper aware of when you are abruptly rejected is this desire in your mind to replay what you could have said, what you should have said. Oftentimes, when we have these interactions, they can be very quick. And maybe the person who initiated the dynamic, maybe they were really thoughtful about it. Maybe they were not. Maybe they were very abrupt about it. And maybe you handled it in a way where you were emotionally reactive, or maybe you handled it in a way where you were pretty tight-lipped and just taking it all in and not quite knowing how to handle the situation in real time. And then the moment passes and you get ideas for an email or a voicemail, and maybe the next day, the next week, the next month. This is your opportunity to make sure that when you are in situations where you feel abruptly rejected, that you take a pause, that if someone is trying to have you respond in a very immediate way, like, hey, I need to talk to you right now, and you get a feeling in your stomach, and actually, you know that you're not in a space to receive whatever the heck they're going to serve, then it's okay to set a healthy boundary and say, hey, I'm interested in communicating, but this time will be best for me. Or how about this time instead? Or maybe you want to take a pause after you receive the communication and say something like, hey, I appreciate you letting me know. I'd like to respond to this, and I can get back to you in about a week. And then you could still be stonewalled. They could say not interested, or they could have no response and not respond again, but that's not your concern. The idea is that over time, because life is full of not even just rejections, people coming and going, situations coming and going. And some people experience this more than others. And I suspect that if you are tuning in, maybe you are on a life path where you have a bit more of that variety in your life. It's simply your life path, not good or bad. And this is something that I wish I learned so much sooner, that it's not about perfection. It's not about kicking yourself like, oh, maybe if I acted in this way or said this thing, everything would be different. Well, sometimes that's true. But other times, if you have repeatedly attracted people that are not willing to work things out, then that's something to look at, right? Maybe creating a stronger foundation earlier on. Another thing to keep in mind is when you are in these situations that are really emotionally charged, where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, this sense of loss, abandonment, or the like, if you are able to in that slight pause that you are giving yourself, if you are able to channel a feeling of love, and this can happen in an instant or it can take practice. But what I'd like you to do is put your hands on your heart and to really identify with love above all else. And if you are going to speak from that place. This is not a time to speak from a wounded place, an angry place. It could be your last interaction in this lifetime on this planet. So, you know what? Have love for it. Because let's say that you did really appreciate the nature of that job, that project, or the budding or more established relationship that's platonic or otherwise. This is an opportunity to not play into whatever dynamic that could be playing out in which you are made wrong. It's more about being rooted in yourself, and you're not flipping a switch. You're not being reactive, like, oh, because this person doesn't like me anymore, now I don't like them. That's not being rooted in yourself. That's not being in your power. That's being reactive and frankly, wish-washy, not in integrity. Because if you have any concern that people are flipping a switch on you and you will readily do it with them, take a look at that. That is something that can be remedied with a bit more intentionality in love towards yourself and love even towards others in those situations. And not everyone's going to believe it. I'm just going to put that out there. When, let's say, someone is a bit confrontational or passive aggressive, and when you are able to tap into that inner resource that we all have, that is loving and, not forcing it, of course, taking that solitude that you need to get to that place and to be able to say, hey, I appreciate you telling me. And I've really appreciated XYZ about this dynamic so much. And I sincerely wish the best for you. Bye. The third one is questioning the universe. So it's getting a little spiritual, right? We've talked about there may be a desire to want to explain yourself. That's the external, your social interactions and connections. There could be this more internal experience of replaying, shoulda, coulda, woulda, said this, or just replaying it in your head, trying to get the story straight, because sometimes these situations can be a bit disorienting. But then when it gets to a place of questioning the universe and thinking that you know better than the universe, that's where can we take a moment and just kind of understand how silly that is? Can we remember the fact that we're born, our brains are growing, and we have no memory of how we got here? There are biological reasons for how we got here, but if you keep rewinding the clock back, 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 the Big Bang is that actually a satisfying reason for how we all ended up here. If you're watching this, something tells me that maybe you've thought about this and it's not the most satisfying answer for you either. When we are questioning the universe, almost with this kind of immature ego, like, oh, wow, I had this plan and it was supposed to go this way and I had this vision. Certainly have those visions. It's important to have those visions because sometimes those things become real. However, if there is something on your path that your life purpose is leading you towards, if you were able to have this radical trust that, okay, no matter what happens, whether I perceive it as good or bad, as pleasurable or painful, if you trust that it's leading you not necessarily to this utopian, joyous, momentous, rich, luxury, hyper loving existence, I mean, that would be amazing and it could happen. But when you are more focused on living out your life purpose and choosing to find both meaning and joy in whatever happens, that is your power. Understanding that you don't make the rules or have the ultimate guide map to your own life. However, you can. You can make your plan and be flexible in the process and trust that, oh, that didn't work out. Maybe there are instances where you want to try it again. Maybe there are instances where you want to redirect. And in the case of being abruptly rejected, that's typically your invitation to redirect your energy to something that can be more loving and receptive to you because you deserve it. My name is Stephanie Toma, and I am so glad that you joined me today. I'd love to hear if anything stood out to you, any thoughts that came to mind on this topic of abrupt rejection, particularly being on the receiving end. I suspect many of us tuning into this video in particular may not be totally quick to reject people due to that empathy of knowing what it's like. But hey, we're human. Maybe sometimes we do it too. So, encouraging that level of reflection and give yourself a big hug. That can just feel so good sometimes. So give yourself a big hug today if you haven't already. Wishing you a beautifully connected day. Until next time.